梁歌作，狂澜，作者有股南话，转载自天涯链接 https://at/fred-0/1026/1026322/ehtml 引言
Written by Liang Gu, author of Crazy Waves, It is difficult to draw with bones. Reprinted from Tianya link. https://tianya.thread/0/10263226/1.html Introduction
这是一部闯险关、破秘境、勇斗怪力乱神、寻金夺宝的传奇故事，也更是一部建功立业、力挽狂澜、挫败邪恶组织的热血史诗。这其中的诸般缘由，还待我从头讲来。
This is a legendary story of overcoming dangers, breaking through secret realms, and bravely fighting monsters and gods to find gold and treasure. It is also a passionate epic of making achievements, turning the tide, and defeating evil organizations. The various reasons for this have yet to be explained from the beginning.
作为一个从来没有把心思放到过课内知识上的学渣，我的学生时代基本上做遍了一个好学生不应该干的所有事情，或者说，上学那会儿，我除了学习以外，什么都会。
As a scumbag who never paid attention to in-class knowledge, I basically did everything a good student shouldn't do when I was a student. In other words, when I was in school, I did nothing but study. Everything can be done.
那时节的我不大的年龄满口的兄弟义气，为了哥们儿，为了姑娘，最没少干的事情就是打架，从单挑到群殴，从徒手到持械，在高中毕业之前，我已经堪称是身经百战。
At that time, I was very young and full of brotherly loyalty. For my buddies and girls, the most common thing I did was fight. From single combat to group fights, from barehanded to armed, before I graduated from high school, I was already capable of fighting. He is said to be experienced in hundreds of battles.
父母无法管教，最终选择让我进入部队这个大熔炉里接受洗练，等几年的服役下来后，说不定还有机会做一个对社会有用的人，最起码不是当个社会闲散人员。
My parents couldn't discipline me, so they finally chose to let me enter the melting pot of the military to receive training. After a few years of service, I might have the opportunity to become a useful person to society, at least not a social idler.
如果你以为我接下来要说的故事是一个刺儿头学生到了部队如何成长、终成一代兵王的套路，那你就大错特错了。而没有这么俗套的原因也很简单，就是因为我上学时候打架太多。
If you think that the story I am going to tell you next is a routine about how a prick-headed student grew up in the army and eventually became a military king, then you are totally wrong. The reason why it is not so cliché is also very simple. It's because I had too many fights when I was in school.
从头顶后背再到前胸留下的大小疤痕足足有10余处，在入伍前的体检中，我第一轮就被刷下来了，从此便与军旅无缘。从那以后，我就成了一个职业小混混。
There are more than a dozen large and small scars left on my head, back, and chest. During the physical examination before joining the army, I was brushed off in the first round, and I will never have a chance to serve in the military. Since then, I have become a professional gangster.
没事可做，便跟一帮狐朋狗友继续以前的那些可能只是为了一两句话说不顺心就以命相搏的勾当。直到有一天，一个像往常一样的下午，在网吧消磨时光的我。
When I have nothing to do, I continue my previous activities with a bunch of friends who might risk my life just for a few words that don't go my way. Until one day, on an afternoon like any other, I was spending time in an internet cafe.
朋友从聊天软件上给我发来一篇配图短文，短文的内容很简单，是一条来自法国外籍军团的招兵启事。这篇启事被翻译成6种语言，在不同国家大规模投放。
A friend sent me a short article with pictures on a chat software. The content of the short article was very simple. It was a recruitment message from the French Foreign Legion. This message was translated into 6 languages and distributed on a large scale in different countries.
希望能为招兵日渐困难的法军提供新鲜血液。而这种启示上，为了能够更加的吸引人，自然是着重描述了一下外籍军团的薪资待遇如何高，可以在全世界各地驻防。
It is hoped that it can provide fresh blood for the French army, which is increasingly difficult to recruit. In order to make this revelation more attractive, it naturally focuses on describing how high the salary and benefits of the Foreign Legion are, and how they can be stationed and deployed all over the world.
执行任务的生活有多么的潇洒，并用浪漫化的措辞将其精心描述一番，然后配上几张我后来才知道是摆拍的威武图片作为视觉噱头。
How glamorous life on a mission can be is carefully described in romanticized terms, and then paired with a few imposing pictures that I later learned were staged as visual gags.
朋友在发来这篇短文后，半开玩笑地问我是不是有兴趣一起去按照短文最后的联系方式报一下名。我想自己的人生的确不能以这种方式混一辈子下去。
After sending this short article, my friend half-jokingly asked me if I would be interested in signing up together according to the contact information at the end of the short article. I thought that I really could not live my life in this way.
那么有早没早打三竿子，如果能应聘成功，说不定真是人生的一次转机。事实证明，这的确是一次人生的转机。我的生活从这里开始就完全走上了一条以前想都不太敢想的路。
So if you can apply for the job successfully, it might be a turning point in your life. Facts have proved that this is indeed a turning point in life. From here on, my life has completely embarked on a path that I never dared to imagine before.
抱着这种想法，我跟朋友两人按照上面的要求，以国籍、性别、身高、体重、血型等指标全部填完，并留下了联系方式后，向所留信箱发出根据短文中的说明，不管能否录取。
With this idea in mind, my friend and I followed the above requirements. After filling out all the nationality, gender, height, weight, blood type, and other indicators and leaving our contact information, we sent it to the email address where we left it. According to the instructions in the short article, regardless of whether it can be obtained or not.
都会在3天之内收到信息。我起初根本没把这东西当回事，完全就是随手填完之后发送出去，转念就给忘了。可3天后，我的手机被一个陌生号码打响。
You will receive the information within 3 days. I didn't take this seriously at first. I just filled it out casually, sent it out and then forgot about it. But 3 days later, my phone rang from an unknown number.
接起电话，一阵简短的对话告诉我，我的基础信息在海选中被通过了。与我一起报名的那名朋友则也通过了海选，同样收了通知电话。我俩再次联系时，经过一番讨论。
After picking up the phone, a brief conversation told me that my basic information had been passed in the audition. The friend who signed up with me also passed the audition and also received a notification phone call. When we contacted him again, we discussed it.
我们决定去试上一试。那时候的想法很简单，就是既然海选都通过了，不接着往下走，岂不可惜了？毕竟年轻时头脑还是简单，什么对方是不是搞人口买卖的蛇头，这等险恶事情。
We decided to give it a try. Our idea at the time was very simple. Since we had passed the audition, wouldn't it be a pity not to continue? After all, when you are young, you are still simple-minded, and there are sinister things like whether the other party is a smuggler who engages in human trafficking.
那会儿都没想，但想法终归是想法。这外籍兵团的征兵实体地点远在万里之外的法国城市马赛。我跟我那朋友说的难听点，就是2个痞子，而且还是那种可支配余额。
I didn't even think about it at the time. But an idea is an idea after all. The physical location of the Foreign Legion's recruitment is thousands of miles away in the French city of Marseille. To put it harshly, my friend and I are just 2 scoundrels, and they still have the kind of disposable balance.
很少超过100块的穷痞子，这跨国乃至跨州的报名，就路费这一项，便是挡在我们面前的最大拦路虎。面对这个拦路虎，做了很多年职业混子的我俩。
We are poor people who rarely have more than 100 yuan. For this cross-border or even cross-continental registration, the travel expenses are the biggest obstacle in front of us. Facing this obstacle, we too have been professional gangsters for many years.
第一次找了份相对正经的工作，在人才市场找了一份给人搬家卸货的力气活，毕竟我俩也不会干别的，而且这活在当时我俩能俩范围之内的工作中，算是挣钱最多的一个。
For the first time, I found a relatively serious job. I found a hard job in the job market, moving people and unloading goods. After all, we didn't know how to do anything else, and this job was within the scope of what we were able to do at the time. Zhong is the one who makes the most money.
干得最多的时候，我俩能每人每天挣到600至700元，虽然累得要死，但也有种以前从未有过的充实感。很多跟我俩一起打打杀杀。
When we worked the most, we could each earn 600 to 700 yuan per day. Although we were exhausted, we also had a sense of fulfillment that we had never experienced before. We often fight and kill together.
的那些狐朋狗友们在问过为什么这么拼命的理由后，都笑话我俩肯定是在打架的时候把脑袋给打坏了。后来，我俩如愿以偿的在招兵启事有效日期来临之前攒够了路费。
After asking the reason why we were so desperate, our friends all laughed that we must have broken our heads during the fight. Later, the 2 of us were able to save enough travel expenses before the effective date of the recruitment notice came.
然后辗转多种交通方式，以近乎于逃难的方式来到了法国马赛，同时也找到了征兵地点，那个负责登记征兵信息、戴着墨绿色贝雷帽的法军士官。
Then he traveled through various modes of transportation and arrived in Marseille, France, in a way that was almost like escape. At the same time, he also found the recruitment location, the French non-commissioned officer wearing a dark green beret who was responsible for registering recruitment information.
看着形象并不比难民强多少的我俩笑了起来，然后将我们2人的基本信息登录在册。幸亏当时在场的有好几个各自精通不同语言的翻译，以应对不同国家的兵员。
Seeing that our image was not much better than that of refugees, we both laughed, and then registered our basic information in the register. Fortunately, there were several translators present who were proficient in different languages to deal with soldiers from different countries.
这其中就有精通中文的，若没有这层翻译，就交流这一关，我俩便过不去。经过简单的体检，我俩再次顺利过关。法国外籍军团对兵员的身体要求要比我军宽松得多。
Among them are those who are proficient in Chinese. Without this level of translation, we would not be able to get through this level of communication. After a simple physical examination, we both successfully passed the test again. The French Foreign Legion's physical requirements for its soldiers are much more relaxed than those of our army.
像我这种一身刀疤，我那朋友纹了3处纹身的情况，在这里根本就不叫事儿。看着这帮不同肤色的人身上各种堪称千奇百怪的样子，那简直就是小巫见大巫。在这期间
My friend, who has scars all over his body and has 3 tattoos, is not a big deal here at all. Seeing all kinds of strange looks on these people of different skin colors, it is simply dwarfing the big picture. During this period,
我们俩各自给国内的父母打了电话，并撒了个谎，告诉他们说我俩现在找了一个去西部铺电缆的活计，工资很高，只是一时半会儿回不去，让他们不要担心。
We each called our parents in China and lied to them, telling them that we had found a job laying cables in the West. The salary was very high, but we wouldn't be able to go back for a while, so we told them not to worry.
而作为从小就没让父母省过心的我俩，那各自的爸妈也没有多问，就说在外一定要小心，然后也就挂断了电话。而体测过关后，第一道难关才真正出现。
As we have never given our parents any worries since we were young, our parents didn't ask any more questions. They just said that we must be careful when going out, and then hung up the phone. But after the body side has passed, the first difficulty really appears.
那还是刚才提到过的语言关，想要在法国外籍兵团待下去，那不管你是来自什么地方的，以前的母语是什么，来到这里就都得统一说法语。在学校英语全靠蒙的我俩。
That's the language barrier I just mentioned. If you want to stay in the French Foreign Legion, no matter where you come from or what your mother tongue was, you have to speak French when you get here. In school, we had to rely on both of us to learn English.
在这里，竟然拿出了从不曾有过的劲头，学习比英语难度更高的法语，并在之后的3个月里，将法语的基本对话可以说得大差不差。
Here I actually used unprecedented energy to learn French, which is more difficult than English, and in the next 3 months, I was able to speak basic conversational French very well.
虽然这种水平就跟刚学会中文的老外在讲中文的感觉差不多。语言关后的2项是体能与文化关，前者我俩过得都很顺利。那早年为了能在街头斗殴中抢得先机。
Although this level is similar to the feeling of a foreigner who has just learned Chinese speaking Chinese. The 2 items after the language test are physical fitness and cultural skills. We both passed the former smoothly, in order to gain the upper hand in street fights in the early years.
占有优势而苦练的身体素质还是顶得住的。至于文化关，那其实也不难，就是拿上一份法文复习资料。
The advantage and hard training in physical fitness can still withstand it. As for the cultural level, it is actually not difficult, just get a French review material.
熟读并背下来，其中有关于法国以及法国外籍兵团的一些光辉历史后，在考试中将其写下来就行。这种死记硬背且内容并不多的考试，对于已经通过语言关的我们来说，
Just read and memorize some of the glorious history about France and the French Foreign Legion and then write it down in the exam. This kind of rote memorization and not much content in the exam is for those of us who have passed the language barrier.
那都不叫事儿。随着3大关全部通过，这一天，我跟我的朋友一起穿上了没有军衔的3色迷彩，成为了一名用国内的话说就是还处于新兵连阶段的新兵蛋子。在此之后
That's no big deal. With all 3 passes passed, on this day, my friend and I put on the 3-color camouflage without military rank, and became a recruit who is still in the recruit company stage in domestic parlance. After this,
迎接我们的便是真正的军事训练。作为一个向全世界开放征兵的军事部门，外籍兵团中最大的特色，那自然是莫过于有各种不同肤色、不同种族、不同国家的人在同一个地点。
What greeted us was real military training. As a military department open to recruitment from all over the world, the biggest feature of the Foreign Legion is naturally that there are people of different skin colors, different races, and different countries in the same place.
同一个部门共同服役了，这种环境下也就给人与人之间的冲突提供了温床。身为黄皮肤黑头发的亚洲人，在这里想要得到那些白人、黑人的尊重，能做的只有一点，那就是够强。
The same department serves together, and this environment provides a breeding ground for conflicts between people. Asians with yellow skin and black hair can only do one thing if they want to get the respect of white people and black people here, and that is, be strong enough.
如果因为训练水平低下拖了团队的后腿而导致被战友群殴，那么除非打出人命，否则新兵连的法国教官是会装看不见的。同时，谁能吃到更可口的饭菜？
If the team is beaten up by a group of comrades due to low training level and is holding back the team, then the French instructor of the recruit company will pretend to be invisible unless someone is killed. At the same time, who can get the more delicious food?
谁能在上下铺中抢到下铺？谁能在洗漱室里找到一个好的位子等诸多鸡毛蒜皮却又涉及到个人利益甚至是尊严的事情，那都需要斗争来换，否则就要像一条狗一样活着。
Who can grab the lower berth among the upper and lower berths? Who can find a good seat in the bathroom? And many other trivial matters that involve personal interests and even dignity, all of which require struggle, otherwise you will be like a dog. Still alive.
但我不怕，这种拳脚相向的事情对于我来说，完全是属于重操旧业而已。所谓他们想把我推下深渊，可我本来就来自那里的话，其中含义也就是如此吧。
But I'm not afraid. For me, this kind of fistfight is just returning to my old business. That's the meaning of the saying, they want to push me into the abyss, but that's where I come from.
我的朋友由于跟我经历相似，所以也是无所谓。而我俩也在异国他乡表现得比在国内更加团结。他的事就是我的事，我的事就是他的事，在一群凶蛮之人中间。
My friend has a similar experience to me, so it doesn't matter, and we are more united in a foreign country than at home. His business is my business, and my business is his business. In a group of ferocious people, middle.
只有拳头才是唯一通行的道理。同进同退之下，我俩打过很多次让教官都拍手叫好的以少胜多的大战。因为这个，那些曾经对我们一脸嗤之以鼻的白人们给我俩起了一个
Only fists are the only universal truth. Advancing and retreating at the same time, we have fought many big battles of victory with less that the instructors applauded. Because of this, those white people who once looked down upon us gave us the nickname
中国双煞的外号，并敬而远之。但教官中也有对黄种人或者说是中国人带有严重歧视和敌意者，比如我们的体能教官，他所负责的范围就是训练士兵的身体素质。
They are nicknamed China's two evils and are given a wide berth. But there are also instructors who have serious discrimination and hostility towards yellow people or the Chinese. For example, our physical fitness instructor is responsible for training the physical fitness of soldiers. Quality.
为了让我俩多吃苦头，他每次给我们安排的训练量都要至少超出其他人的30，他企图用超高强度的训练压垮我，但我让他失望了。我不仅没有被练趴下。
In order to make us suffer more, the amount of training he arranged for us every time must be at least 30 times higher than that of other people. He tried to crush me with ultra-high-intensity training, but I let him down. Not only did I not get trained down,
反而还在初级的疲惫之后，逐渐适应了这种强度，并在这样带有针对性质的训练下，最终达到能够负重25公斤，在山路条件下以44分39秒的时间内完成10公里武装越野。
On the contrary, after the initial fatigue, I gradually adapted to this intensity, and under such targeted training, I was finally able to carry a weight of 25 kilograms and complete a 10-kilometer armed cross-country in 44 minutes and 39 seconds on mountainous conditions.
这个成绩在我创造它的当年，直到我离开外籍兵团，那都是外籍兵团新兵连的最高纪录。除此之外，我甚至可以扛着35公斤的单人原木连续走上1公里的鸭子步。
This achievement was the highest record among the recruit companies of the Foreign Legion from the year I achieved it until I left the Foreign Legion. On top of that, I can even walk a 1-kilometer duck walk carrying a 35-kilogram single log.
格斗技能也是稳拿全连第一。而我的这些训练成绩也让这个蔑视黄种人、亚洲人的体能教官最终哑口无言，并在我分配的那一天向我竖起了大拇指。
My fighting skills were also ranked first in the company, and my training results made this physical instructor who despised yellow people and Asians speechless in the end, and gave me a thumbs up on the day I was assigned. My fighting skills were also ranked first in the company, and my training results made this physical instructor who despised yellow people and Asians speechless in the end, and gave me a thumbs up on the day I was assigned.
在结束为期1年的全面性基础训练之后，我跟我的朋友被分到了2个不同的单位。我凭借着更好的军事素养，被分在了素有外籍兵团之人称号的外籍第2团。
After completing the 1-year comprehensive basic training, my friends and I were assigned to 2 different units. With my better military quality, I was assigned to the foreign military unit known as the Blade of the Foreign Legion. The second group.
也就是大名鼎鼎的伞兵团。这里是整个外籍兵团中唯一一支具备机降作战、空中快速反应能力，且战斗力最强、装备最好、待遇最高，但淘汰率与危险系数也最高的一个单位。
This is the famous Parachute Regiment. It is the only unit in the entire Foreign Corps that has the capabilities of airborne combat and rapid aerial response. It has the strongest combat effectiveness, the best equipment, and the highest treatment, but it also has the highest elimination rate and risk factor.
而我那朋友则分到了相对低一些的外籍第3团，这是一个步兵团。从此以后，我便开启了长达9年的外籍兵团服役生涯。之前所说与军旅无缘到这里也并不准确。
My friend was assigned to the relatively low-ranking 3rd Foreign Regiment, which was an infantry regiment. Since then, I have started a 9-year service career in the Foreign Legion. What I said before was not accurate because I had no chance to get here due to the military.
应该说我在国内是如此，但没想到却当了国外的兵，在接受正式军衔并拿上带有专属编号的 FOMAS 型 5.56 毫米自动步枪那天，正好是我19岁的生日。想想那时的1年前。
It should be said that I was like this at home, but I didn't expect to become a soldier abroad. The day I accepted the official military rank and picked up the FOMAS 5.56mm automatic rifle with an exclusive number happened to be my 19th birthday. Think about it at that time. A year ago.
19岁的我，为了一块玉米饼，就跟几个25岁以上、人高马大，并有大量前科的白人打得满脸是血，却毫无惧色。
At the age of 19, I was beaten up by several white men over 25 years old, tall and with many criminal records, for a piece of tacos. My face was covered in blood, but I showed no fear.
我不知道当时是什么力量让一个19岁的少年背井离乡，克服了这些困难。如果非要说一个理由的话，我想那就是命运吧。未完待续。夺命罗南。马里遇袭。
I don't know what force made a 19-year-old boy leave his hometown and overcome these difficulties. If I had to give a reason, I think it would be fate. To be continued. 1. The fatal Luo Nan. 1. Attack on Mali.
在我于外籍兵团服役的第8个年头，我所在的伞兵团被派往马里执行作战任务。马里，这是一个位于非洲西部的内陆国家，被联合国评为全世界最不发达国家之一。
In my 8th year of service in the Foreign Legion, my paratrooper regiment was deployed to Mali, a landlocked country in West Africa that has been classified as the least developed country in the world by the United Nations. 1.
自1995年沦为法属殖民以来，它就被战乱、饥荒、瘟疫所纠缠，一直到今天。
Since it became a French colony in 1995, it has been plagued by war, famine, and plague until today.
虽然发起于20世纪50年代的非洲独立运动大潮让马里摆脱殖民地的身份，成为一个独立国家，但战后法国为了保持在国际上的影响力和存在感。
Although the African independence movement launched in the 1950s allowed Mali to shed its colonial status and become an independent country, after the war, France in order to maintain its international influence and presence.
对当年法属殖民地国家的内政实施干预的行动不在少数，而马里政府在国力贫弱的前提下，为了对付国内日益猖獗的极端武装组织，倒也十分乐见这种干预。而我
There were many attempts to intervene in the internal affairs of French colonial countries, and the Mali government was very happy to see such intervention in order to deal with the increasingly rampant extremist armed organizations in the country despite its weak national strength, and I
就是在这个大背景下来到了这里。9年的服役生涯与长时间处于战乱地区驻防经历，让我基本上完成了法军所有与一线作战人员有关的军事训练。
It is against this background that I came here. With 9 years of military service and long-term garrison experience in war-torn areas, I have basically completed all the French Army's military training related to frontline combatants.
主要担任突击手与狙击手，具体担任什么则根据情况所需而定。这种专业的最高等级技能证书我也早已全部拿到，同时还参与过数次多国特种作战力量联合的反恐行动。
I mainly serve as an assaulter and a sniper, and the specific role depends on the needs of the situation. I have already obtained all the highest-level skill certificates in this profession, and I have also participated in several anti-terrorist operations jointly conducted by multinational special operations forces.
而我那位被分到步兵团的朋友，则在我服役第5年时传来了噩耗。他在某次巡逻中遭到武装分子的手榴弹攻击，一枚弹片穿过了他的防弹衣缝隙，直接钻开皮肉，钉在了脊柱上。
My friend who was assigned to the infantry regiment received bad news in my 5th year of service. He was attacked by a grenade from militants during a patrol, and a shrapnel penetrated the gap in his body armor. The skin and flesh are directly drilled and nailed to the spine.
这一次重创险些让他下半身永远截瘫，但即便没有落一个要在轮椅上度过下半生的下场，可也大大影响了他的生理机能，导致他不得不提前结束自己在外籍兵团的服役。
This serious injury almost made his lower body permanently paraplegic, but even if he did not end up spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair, it greatly affected his physiological functions, causing him to have to end his service in the Foreign Legion early.
最后拿到了一笔相对可观的退伍费后，回到了国内做起了小买卖，同时至今还在做着有关腰腿的康复性训练。在得知他没有生命危险之后，我其实挺为他高兴的。
Finally, after receiving a relatively considerable amount of retirement pay, he returned to China and started a small business. At the same time, he is still doing rehabilitation training on his waist and legs. After learning that his life was not in danger, I was actually quite happy for him.
因为这样最起码可以离开这危险的境地，回国过上安逸的生活，而不像我还要继续坚持下去。虽然外籍兵团中的逃兵率很高，其中尤其以英国人、美国人为主。
Because in this way, at least I can leave this dangerous situation and return to my country to live a comfortable life, unlike me who has to continue to persevere. Although the desertion rate in the Foreign Legion is very high, especially the British and Americans.
但这不是中国人的作风。在一个注定让我的人生轨迹发生改变的一天里，我乘坐一辆潘哈德 VBL。
But this is not the Chinese way. On a day that was destined to change the trajectory of my life, I took a ride on a Panhard VBL.
行四乘以4轻型轮式装甲车与另外3辆同型号装甲在当地属于最高危的地区展开武装巡逻。所谓武装巡逻，就是对当地的极端武装组织展开一种震慑。当然
A 4x4 light-wheeled armored vehicle and 3 other armored vehicles of the same type carried out armed patrols in the most dangerous areas in the area. The so-called armed patrols are a deterrent to local extremist armed organizations. Of course.
震慑能够奏效的前提是对方的确怕你，但如果不怕，那这种行动就极有可能变成一次羊入虎口的送死行为。比如这次，正当车队开始穿过此地的一个村庄。
The premise that deterrence can be effective is that the other party is really afraid of you, but if not, then this kind of action is very likely to become a sheep in the tiger's mouth act of sending death, such as this time. Just as the motorcade began to pass through a village here.
车厢里的2名战友津津有味、满脸期待地讨论着我们所在的伞兵团要将大名鼎鼎的风马燕舞团请来劳军。这时，在装甲车顶部露出半个身子，操作着一挺 M2 型12。
The two comrades in the carriage were discussing with great anticipation that our paratrooper regiment was going to invite the famous Crazy Horse dance troupe to join the army. Half of their bodies were exposed on the top of the armored vehicle and they were operating an M212.
7毫米重机枪负责警戒的机枪手突然在耳机里大喊了起来：“火箭筒！”话音落下，随之而来的就是 M2 型重机枪咚咚咚咚咚的缓慢而沉重的扫射声。
The machine gunner on guard with the 7mm heavy machine gun suddenly shouted in the earphone. Bazooka. After the words fell, what followed was the slow and heavy sound of dong 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 from the M2 heavy machine gun.
不过这种声音响了不出10声，我就感觉眼前一亮，一道黄白色的火光从我的斜侧面就刺破装甲钻了进来，然后直挺挺地打在了刚才正说着风马燕舞团的战友胸口上。
However, this sound didn't last more than 10 times, and I felt my eyes light up. A streak of yellow-white fire penetrated my armor from the diagonal side, and then hit the person who was saying, Crazy Horse, straight away. On the chest of the comrades in the dance troupe.
这一击轻松穿透他的防弹衣，然后在他的胸口上打出一个可以将成年人拳头塞进去的窟窿，并将他身后的装甲板也一并击穿。而刚才钻进这道火光的位置，已经露出一个焦黑的洞。
This blow easily penetrated his body armor, then created a hole in his chest that could fit an adult's fist into, and also penetrated the armor plate behind him. The location has revealed a charred hole.
透过洞可以看到外面满天飞扬的尘土，它背面的破洞也是一样。我当即便意识到这是遭到了火箭弹的攻击。
Through the hole, you can see the dust flying in the sky outside, as well as the hole on his back. I immediately realized that it was a rocket attack.
刚才那一道黄白色的火光，乃至巨能战斗部在撞击装甲后产生的金属射流。这种温度高达9000余摄氏度的射流可以轻松软化并击穿军制装甲，而潘德哈 VBL。
The yellow-white fire just now and even the metal jet produced by the concentrated energy warhead after the collision with the armor. This jet with a temperature of more than 9,000 degrees Celsius can easily soften and penetrate homogeneous armor, and that's Panhard VBL.
型装甲车属于典型的轻型装甲车，即便对方使用的是 RPG-7 这样的老式火箭筒，那只能抵挡中口径机枪子弹的前者装甲也完全不堪一击。那位被当胸打个正着的战友。
The armored vehicle is a typical light armored vehicle. Even if the opponent uses an old-fashioned rocket launcher like the RPG-7, the former's armor, which can only withstand medium-caliber machine gun bullets, is completely vulnerable. The comrade who was punched in the chest.
随即口吐几口鲜血后，身子往前一栽，死在了当场。没等我做出下一个反应时，第2枚火箭弹就到了。这次打得略高，看位置是明显冲着机枪手去的。
Then he vomited a few mouthfuls of blood, fell forward, and died on the spot. Before I could react, the second rocket arrived. This time it was fired slightly higher, and it was clearly aimed at the machine gunner.
同样是金属射流，轻易地在瞬间就击穿了装甲板，然后从侧面打在了处于站立姿势的机枪手双膝位置， 而我此时处于坐姿，一歪头就能看到下半身在车内的机枪手。
The same metal jet easily penetrated the armor plate in an instant, and then hit the standing machine gunner's knees from the side. As for me, who was sitting now, I could see my lower body in the car when I tilted my head. Machine gunner.
我便眼睁睁地看着他的双腿在一道金属射流的贯穿下当场和大腿分离，他的2条小腿全被打断了。没有了小腿的支撑，机枪手的身子向下一落，跌回了车内。
I watched helplessly as his legs were separated from his thighs on the spot by a metal jet. Both of his calves were completely broken. Without the support of his calves, the machine gunner's body fell down and fell back into the car.
紧随其后的就是他撕心裂肺一般的惨叫声以及流得满车都是的鲜血。这2枚火箭弹发射的间隔太短，我们起初没有反应过来。等机枪手双腿被打断，这时候
What followed was his heartrending screams and the blood that flowed all over the car. The interval between the 2 rocket launches was too short, and we didn't react at first until the machine gunner's legs were broken.
那再没反应，作为一线作战人员就死有余辜了。于是车内幸存的4人在第一时间打开车门向外冲了出去。我将手中的 FOMAS 突击步枪端起来也不瞄准。
If there was no response, as a frontline combatant, he would be dead unjustly, so the 4 surviving people in the car immediately opened the door and rushed out. I picked up the FOMAS assault rifle in my hand without taking aim.
就是概略地对准敌人可能的所在方向展开盲射，想起到一点压制效果，好给自己下一步找到掩体争取时间。
Just aim roughly in the direction where the enemy is likely to be and start blind firing, thinking of a little suppression effect to buy yourself time to find the bunker next.
我们遭到袭击的位置正好处于一个只有30多户人家的小型村庄里，因此所幸四周还有一些当地村民的土墙可供掩护。我看准其中距离自己最近的一面，快速跃进。
The location where we were attacked happened to be in a small village with only more than 30 households, so fortunately there were some earthen walls of local villagers around for cover. I spotted the side closest to me and jumped forward quickly.
同时也看到打头的装甲车早已被火箭弹击穿了发动机舱而彻底趴窝，而第2辆还有机动能力，它开动起来看样子是想利用高机动性准备迂回到对方的侧后，打对方一个措手不及。
At the same time, I also saw that the leading armored vehicle had already been penetrated by the rocket in the engine compartment and was completely lying down. The second armored vehicle still had the ability to maneuver. When it started to move, it seemed that it wanted to use its high mobility to get back to the opponent's side and hit the opponent. Caught off guard.
可刚绕开前面头车的残骸开出去没有30米远，一个裹挟着无数尘土和碎石的烟柱就从他的右侧车轮下炸了出来，紧接着就是震耳欲聋的爆炸声与席卷而来的冲击波。
But as soon as it drove around the wreckage of the car in front and drove out within 30 meters, a smoke column, wrapped with countless dust and gravel, exploded from under its right wheel, followed by a deafening explosion and sweeping the shock wave is coming.
爆炸声震得带着耳麦的我都一阵耳膜发疼，而随后感到的气浪则打在我身上，将我当场掀翻在地。
The sound of the explosion was so loud that my eardrums hurt even though I was wearing a headset, and the airwaves that followed hit me and knocked me to the ground on the spot.
一阵内脏被震荡过后的强烈恶心感和眩晕感传来的同时，也把我摔了个七荤八素。这种情况很明显是第2辆装甲车遭到了 IED 简易爆炸装置的攻击。
A strong sense of nausea and dizziness came from the shock to my internal organs, which also knocked me out of my skin. In this case, it was obvious that the second armored vehicle was attacked by an IED, improvised explosive device.
而造成这次攻击的，则是当地极端武装使用一枚2战时期100公斤航空炸弹。这枚炸弹的威力将第2辆装甲车整个车头炸飞了一大半，车也底朝天地翻在了路边。
The attack was caused by the use of a 100-kilogram aerial bomb from World War II by local extremist forces. The power of this bomb blew up more than half of the entire front of the second armored vehicle, and the vehicle also flipped upside down on the side of the road.
里面的人恐怕就是不死，也会在距离的爆炸震荡下晕厥。而我之后得知，这一车里的人落得了一个全军覆没的下场。由于潘哈德 VBL 型装甲车没有类似防地雷巡逻车那样的 V。
Even if the people inside were not dead, they would faint from the shock of the explosion at a distance. I later learned that the people in this car ended up being wiped out because the Panhard VBL armored vehicle did not have similar weapons. A V like a mine-resistant patrol car.
次底盘等具备防雷减震功能的设计，所以那枚 IED 的爆炸将能量结结实实的都传递到了车体乃至车内的人身上。这6个人全部被震得当场七窍流血而亡。
The chassis was designed with lightning protection and shock absorption functions, so the explosion of the IED transmitted the energy firmly to the car body and even the people in the car. All 6 people were shocked and bled to death on the spot.
而我这边这会儿身体虽然很难受，但躺在原地与等死无异。 所以咬着牙翻身爬起，继续打了一通盲射，跟着其他的幸存者一起在越过土墙之后，钻进了一间村民民房之中。
Although my body felt very uncomfortable at the moment, lying there was no different than waiting for death, so I gritted my teeth and rolled over, got up, and continued to shoot blindly. I followed the other survivors and got into a hole after crossing the earth wall. Among the villagers' houses.
而这间屋子的主人这时候早就被吓得蜷缩在墙角瑟瑟发抖，不敢动弹。妈的，这可是我的最后一次任务。我的一名黑人战友拉坎啐了口唾沫说：“少说这些废话。”
The owner of this room was so frightened that he huddled in the corner and shivered, not daring to move. Damn, this is my last mission, one of my black comrades, Locken, spat. Stop talking this nonsense.
现在看看我们还有多少人。立即请求支援，让最近的航空兵来炸这帮杂种。此次行动的指挥官阿德里安说：“这帮家伙看起来还是新手。”
Now look how many more of us there are. Request support immediately and let the nearest aviation force blow up these bastards. Adrian, the commander of this operation, said. These guys look like newbies.
如果在车队行驶到 IED 的正上方将其引爆后再打，恐怕我们这些人至少还要多完蛋一半以上。我说。拉坎就是负责联系航空兵的通信员。
If we had detonated the IED after the convoy was driving directly above it, I'm afraid we would have been killed by at least half as many people. I said. Locken is the communicator responsible for contacting the aviation force.
他按照阿德里安的命令开始对附近的友军基地请求支援，但得到的回复却非常让人窝火。回复是目前没有可以战机可以升空，直升机没有，固定翼飞机更没有。
Following Adrian's order, he began to request support from nearby friendly bases, but the reply he got was very annoying. The reply was that there were currently no fighter planes that could take off, no helicopters, and no fixed-wing aircraft.
甚至连可以调用的地面部队也没有。最后给我们的命令或者说是建议是让我们自行向一个约定地点突围，在那里会有接应部队。那眼下这种情况是死是活就得全靠自己。
There were not even ground troops that could be mobilized. The final order or suggestion given to us was to let us break out to an agreed-upon location on our own, where there would be a response force. In this situation, whether you live or die depends entirely on yourself.
我们纷纷将枪口探出窗户，利用瞄具上的优势，开始对外面正在向这里包抄过来的极端武装展开精确射击。
We all stuck our guns out of the window and took advantage of the sights to start firing accurately at the extremist armed forces outside that were outflanking us.
我把自动步枪导轨上的全息瞄准镜中的瞄准点套在那些武装分子的胸口或头部，一发一发地进行精确点射。一个弹匣打光后，我默数着至少有5名武装分子被我击毙。
I put the aiming point in the holographic sight on the automatic rifle rail on the chest or head of the militants and fired accurately 1 round at a time. After the magazine was empty, I silently counted at least 5 militants. Shot to death by me.
其中有2名是被爆头而死。不过这种战斗中 FOMAS 型自动步枪的一个巨大缺点也露了出来，这就是射击基线太高，装上瞄准具后就变得更高了。
2 of them were shot in the head and died. However, in this kind of battle, a huge shortcoming of the FOMAS automatic rifle was also exposed, which is that the shooting baseline is too high, and it becomes even higher after the sight is installed.
想要对准窗外的目标精确射击，那就得把大半个脑袋都露出去，这无疑增加了自身的中弹几率。我还好，依托着窗角斜着往外射击，这个缺陷在此种状态下并不明显。
If you want to shoot accurately at the target outside the window, you have to expose most of your head, which undoubtedly increases your chance of being shot. Fortunately, I relied on the corner of the window and shot out diagonally. This flaw is in this it is not obvious in the state.
可一些正对着窗户的战友就不一样了，其中有3人就是因为暴露面积过大，被对方大面积压制性射击打过来的榴弹击中了头部或面部，造成了1死2伤。其中1人是重伤。
But it was different for some of the comrades who were facing the window. 3 of them were hit in the head or face by stray bullets from the opponent's large-scale suppressive fire because the exposed area was too large, causing 1 death and 2 injuries. But it was different for some of the comrades who were facing the window. 3 of them were hit in the head or face by stray bullets from the opponent's large-scale suppressive fire because the exposed area was too large, causing 1 death and 2 injuries. 1 of them was seriously injured.
而死亡的那人还是被一枚12.7乘以109毫米的苏制大口径机枪子弹打中了面门。这种子弹的枪口动能高达上万焦耳，直接击中人脸的结果就是整个头都被打爆了。
The dead man was hit in the face by a 12.7 by 109mm Soviet-made large-caliber machine gun bullet. The kinetic energy of this bullet was as high as tens of thousands of joules. The result of a direct hit on the face was that the entire head was injured. Exploded.
他头顶的头盔也飞了出去。在落地之后，我甚至还能看到那顶头盔的后脑部分在子弹的冲击下也已经不翼而飞，并留下了一段参差不齐的缺口，同时里面还有一块颅骨的残片。
The helmet on his head also flew off. After landing, I could even see that the back part of the helmet had disappeared under the impact of the bullet, leaving a jagged gap. There was also a fragment of a skull inside.
话说到这里，武装分子已经开过来了大量装有苏制 DSHK 型 12.7 毫米大口径机枪的皮卡车，刚才打爆我身边战友脑袋的就是这种机枪发射出的子弹。
Having said that, the militants have already driven over a large number of pickup trucks equipped with Soviet-made DSHK 12.7mm large-caliber machine guns. The bullets fired by this machine gun just blew the heads of my comrades beside me.
这种机枪诞生于二战，沉重而老旧，精度不高，可火力很强，尤其是密集射击的时候，对像我们这样的轻步兵软目标有着很强的压制能力。
This kind of machine gun was born in World War II. It is heavy and old, has low accuracy but very strong firepower. Especially when firing intensively, it has a strong ability to suppress soft targets like light infantry like us.
而我们反击他们的方式只有抽冷子，用精确射击打掉对方站在皮卡后斗上的机枪射手。
The only way we can counterattack them is to take advantage of them and use precise shooting to kill the opponent's machine gun shooter standing on the back of the pickup truck.
或者是依靠2名装备有枪挂榴弹发射器的战友发射40毫米高爆榴弹，直接打掉整辆汽车。幸运的是，作为西非国家的马里，由于气候原因。
Or rely on 2 comrades equipped with gun-mounted grenade launchers to launch 40mm high-explosive grenades to directly destroy the entire car. Fortunately, Mali, as a West African country, has poor climate conditions.
这里的民房特点是窗户较小，而墙壁很厚，用于抵御太阳的暴晒，可以在夏季起到防暑降温的效果。而厚重的墙壁一般由当地的一种泥土与和沙外加碎石构成。
The private houses here are characterized by small windows and thick walls, which are used to resist the sun's rays and can prevent heatstroke and cool down in summer. The thick walls are generally made of local soil, river sand, and gravel.
筑成后被阳光晒干的韧性极高，对子弹的防御力也十分强大。即便是 12.7 毫米的大口径机枪子弹，打在上面也只能是打出一个个弹孔，却无法将其击穿。
It has extremely high toughness when dried in the sun after being built, and its defense against bullets is also very strong. Even a 12.7mm large-caliber machine gun bullet can only make bullet holes in it, but it cannot penetrate it.
至于其他徒步武装分子使用的 AKM 型自动步枪、SVD 型狙击步枪等发射中口径中间威力子弹与中口径全威力子弹的枪械，对于这样的墙壁更是无可奈何。
As for the AKM-type automatic rifles, SVD-type sniper rifles and other firearms used by other dismounted militants that fire medium-caliber intermediate-power bullets and medium-caliber full-power bullets, they are even more helpless against such a wall.
这让我们躲在墙后暂时还是安全的。我心里琢磨着，这唯一能威胁到这种墙壁的就是对方手中的火箭筒了，便对阿德里安说：“咱们得优先打掉火箭筒手。”
This makes us safe behind the wall for now. I thought to myself that the only thing that could threaten this kind of wall was the rocket launcher in the opponent's hand, so I said to Adrian, "We have to kill the bazooka man first."
这墙挡得住子弹，但挡不住火箭弹。可等话音刚刚落下，阿德里安还没来得及回话，这会儿比火箭筒威胁更大的东西就出现了。
This wall can stop bullets but not rockets. But just as he finished speaking, before Adrian could reply, something more threatening than the rocket launcher appeared.
那是4辆装有西柚23 2型双管23毫米高炮。这种高炮以其性能已经很难再对付当今的航空器了，但它却还有很大的存在价值，那就是平射打击地面目标。
Those are 4 vehicles equipped with ZU-23-2 double-barreled 23mm anti-aircraft guns. This kind of anti-aircraft gun is no longer able to deal with today's aircraft due to its performance, but it still has great existence value, that is, it can hit ground targets with flat fire.
这些车全部还横着停在了距离房屋只有200米左右的位置，然后在武装分子的操作之下，将高炮对准我们所在的房屋，当即就展开齐射。
All these vehicles were parked sideways only about 200 meters away from the house. Then, under the control of the militants, they aimed the anti-aircraft guns at the house where we were and immediately launched a volley of fire.
那一刻，有无数以每秒钟750米初速飞行的23毫米炮弹打在了墙壁上。这墙壁能挡得住 12.7 毫米的机枪子弹，可挡不住23毫米的高炮炮弹。
At that moment, countless 23mm artillery shells flying at a muzzle velocity of 750 meters per second hit the wall. The wall could block 12.7mm machine gun bullets, but it could not block 23mm anti-aircraft artillery shells.
那一枚枚炮弹击穿墙壁后，对躲在后面的我们展开了毫不留情的屠杀。 去掉我所在的第4辆装甲车中阵亡的2人，再去掉被炸翻的第2辆装甲车而全体损失的6人。
After the shells penetrated the wall, they slaughtered us hiding behind without mercy. Excluding the 2 people who were killed in the 4th armored vehicle I was in, and the 6 people who were lost in the 2nd armored vehicle that was blown over.
然后去掉第1辆与第3辆装甲车中一共阵亡的3人，这一共24人的武装巡逻队打到这里，一共战斗减员了2+9+3等于13人，冲进屋里的还剩11人。
Then excluding the 3 people who were killed in the 1st and 3rd armored vehicles, the armed patrol of 24 people arrived here, with a total combat loss of 2 + 9 + 3 is equal to 13 people, and there were still 11 people who rushed into the house. People.
而这11人中，刚才又被机枪爆头1人，这就还剩10人。我们10个人在4门双管弓8个炮口狂扫之下，上来就又被击毙了4人，还能动弹的只剩下了6人。除了这4人外，
And among these 11 people, another one was shot in the head by a machine gun just now, so there are only 10 people left. The 10 of us, under the wild sweep of 4 double-barreled guns and 8 cannons, for more people were killed when we came up. Only 6 people were able to move. Except for these 4 people.
还有缩在墙角的那个屋子主人，这是个看起来有些营养不良的中年男人，因为我们的到来而给他带来了杀身之祸。日后我每每想起此事，都有些许自责涌上心头。话说回来，
There was also the owner of the house huddled in the corner. He was a middle-aged man who looked a little malnourished. Our arrival brought him a fatal disaster. Every time I think about this in the future, I feel a little self-blame. Heart. Having said that,
这23毫米的高炮炮弹打在身上，那可不是闹着玩的，绝没有弹孔一说。只要是直接命中，那一定会被当场打成一堆碎肉。
The 23mm anti-aircraft artillery shells hitting the body are no joke. There are absolutely no bullet holes. As long as it is a direct hit, it will be beaten into a pile of minced meat on the spot.
插入硬质插板，北约3级标准防弹衣，在样的打击下，如同薄纸一般脆弱。而被击中的这5人也基本都是这个结果。炮弹击中身体后所释放出的动能，轻松将他们的身体撕裂来。
NATO Level 3 standard body armor with hard inserts inserted is as fragile as tissue paper under such a blow, and the 5 people who were hit basically had this result. The kinetic energy released after the shell hit their bodies easily knocked them out. The body is torn apart.
那一瞬间，大量鲜血就洒得满屋满墙都是。被击中腹部的1人则被打了个肚烂肠穿，破碎的内脏流了一地。
At that moment, a large amount of blood was sprinkled all over the room and walls. The person who was hit in the abdomen was beaten to death, and his broken internal organs were shed all over the floor.
空气中充满了子弹发射时发射药燃烧后和血腥味混合在一起的一种奇怪味道。好在这些年的驻外作战经历让我已经可以适应这样的画面，这样的气息。
The air is filled with a strange smell of burning propellant mixed with the smell of blood when bullets are fired. Fortunately, my years of experience in fighting abroad have allowed me to adapt to such scenes and smells.
我与其他人则一起都以匍匐的姿势趴在地上，以尽可能的降低自己被穿墙而过的炮弹击中的概率。一阵疯狂的扫射之后，对方搬出了这一战中最强的大杀器。
I and others all lay on the ground in a crawling position to reduce the probability of being hit by shells passing through the wall as much as possible. After a burst of crazy shooting, the opponent brought out the most powerful, big killer in this battle.
一门美制 M40 型106毫米无后坐力炮，使用高爆弹配合不少于20具的火箭筒，就开始对我们所在的房屋展开轰击。本来就被打成蜂窝的墙壁，在强度上比之前已经大为下降。
A US-made M40 106mm recoilless gun, using high explosive shells and no less than 20 rocket launchers, began to bombard the house where we were. The wall that had been beaten into a honeycomb was greatly reduced in strength compared to before.
现在再被106毫米的高爆弹直接命中，那么如果我们继续待在这里的话，即便不会被炸死，也会因为房屋的倒塌而被活埋在其中。另外
Now if we are directly hit by a 106mm high explosive bomb, if we continue to stay here, even if we will not be killed, we will be buried alive because of the collapse of the house. In addition,
从高炮皮卡与无后坐力炮皮卡的先后到来，这说明这一伙武装分子还有大量的援军在路上，那么即使是硬碰硬的战斗，我们这些个残兵败将更是没有胜算，甚至还可能被抓了俘虏。
The arrival of anti-aircraft gun pickup trucks and recoilless gun pickup trucks shows that this group of militants still has a large number of reinforcements on the way. Even in a head-to-head battle, we defeated soldiers have no chance of winning, and may even be defeated. Captured prisoners.
而给他们当俘虏，恐怕会是生不如死的结果。所以摆在我们面前的路只有一条，那就是像驻地那边的建议说的那样，突围。
Being held captive by them would probably result in a life worse than death. So there is only one way before us, and that is to break out of the encirclement as the advice from the station said.
现在唯一对我们有利的条件，则是这场伏击战斗发生在下午黄昏时分。经过这一番战斗，黑夜即将降临，而我们每人都携带有第二代单兵双木夜视仪。
The only favorable condition for us now is that this ambush battle took place at dusk in the afternoon. After this battle, night is about to fall, and each of us carries a second-generation individual soldier binocular night vision device.
和没有夜视装备，只能靠肉眼识别目标的武装分子比起来，在感知能力上，我们的优势很明显，这将是我们突围的最大依仗。
Compared with militants who do not have night vision equipment and can only rely on naked eyes to identify targets, we have obvious advantages in perception capabilities, which will be our biggest reliance on breaking out.
通过抽冷子在窗口用自动步枪与榴弹发射器还击的方式，我们终于坚持到了黑夜的完全降临，将原本倒着翻在头盔上的夜视仪向下一掰，将其正着扣在了眼睛之上。
By taking advantage of the cold and fighting back with automatic rifles and grenade launchers from the window, we finally persisted until the dark night fell completely. We flipped the night vision device that had been turned upside down on the helmet downwards and buckled it upright between the eyes. Superior.
随后整个视野变成了一片墨绿，这对色彩的识别能力是一种严重弱化，但对事物的轮廓识别能力却是一种极大的加强，肉眼的一片黑暗中。
Then the entire field of vision turned into a dark green, which severely weakened the ability to recognize colors, but greatly enhanced the ability to recognize the outlines of things, in the darkness of the naked eye.
通过它，我能清晰地看到对面武装分子的身形轮廓。如此一来，幸存的6人在阿德里安的分配下，被临时编成了2个战斗小组，每3人一组。
Through it, I could clearly see the silhouette of the militants on the opposite side. As a result, the surviving 6 people were temporarily organized into 2 combat groups under Adrian's assignment, each consisting of 3 people.
2名带有40毫米枪挂榴弹发射器榴弹手的与1名装备 FMX 型 7.62 毫米通用机枪轻型状态的机枪手为火力支援组，任务是殿后掩护，而阿德里安则与我。
2 grenadiers with 40mm gun-mounted grenade launchers and 1 machine gunner equipped with an FNMAG 7.62mm general-purpose machine gun in light form are the fire support team. Their task is to provide rear cover, while Adrian and I
拉坎3人组成突击组，一会儿冲出去后，专门攻击对方的车载武器，把这些对我们威胁最大的目标打掉之后，就立即脚底抹油。任务确定完毕之后，事不宜迟，立即投入执行。
The 3 Lockens formed an assault team. After a while, they rushed out and specifically attacked the opponent's vehicle-mounted weapons. After destroying these targets that posed the greatest threat to us, they immediately greased the soles of their feet. After the task is determined, it can be implemented immediately without further delay.
按照事先的计划，火力支援组暂时以屋外的土墙作为掩体，牵制对方火力，为我们的行动创造有利条件。
According to the prior plan, the fire support team temporarily used the earthen wall outside the house as a bunker to contain the opponent's firepower and create favorable conditions for our operations.
而我们则借助夜视仪带来的视觉感知优势，一路击毙了至少10几名武装分子后，冲到了这条贯穿村子、宽度不足5米的主干道对面，而刚才车队就是在这条路上遇袭的。
And we took advantage of the visual perception brought by the night vision goggles to kill at least a dozen militants along the way, and then rushed to the opposite side of the main road that ran through the village and was less than 5 meters wide. The convoy was on this road just now. Attacked.
随后又是一阵战斗前进，我们一直摸到了对方这5辆武装皮卡的附近，通过精确射击，先是干掉了这5辆车上的驾驶员及武器操作人员，然后我把枪背在背后。
Then there was another round of fighting, and we got close to the opponent's 5 armed pickup trucks. Through precise shooting, we first killed the drivers and weapons operators on the 5 vehicles, and then I put the gun behind my back.
压低身子快跑2步，接着一个纵身就跳上了其中1辆的后斗，而这2辆皮卡正是装有无后坐力炮的那辆。原本我以为车上的武装分子都已经死光了才对，可上来之后脚下一紧。
I lowered my body and ran for 2 quick steps, then jumped into the back of one of the pickup trucks. The 2 pickup trucks were the ones equipped with recoilless rifles. I originally thought that all the militants in the truck were dead. Yes, but my feet felt tight after I came up.
被人抓住脚踝，一下子就拽倒在地，随后一个黑影就扑了上来，压在了我的身上，同时用双手狠狠地掐住我的脖子，想要将我掐死。
Someone grabbed my ankle and pulled me to the ground. Then a dark figure rushed up and pressed on me. At the same time, it grabbed my neck with both hands and tried to strangle me to death.
同时还有几滴温热粘稠样液体从他的身上滴落了下来，那液体不是别的，正是鲜血。原来这个黑影就是刚才操作无后坐力炮的武装分子。
At the same time, a few drops of warm, viscous liquid dripped from his body. The liquid was none other than blood. It turned out that the black figure was the militant who had just operated the recoilless rifle.
他被我用 FOMAS 自动步枪击中胸口后，并没有死，在我上车后，这才抱起伤人。都说北约标准的 5.56 乘以45毫米步枪弹停止作用弱，在除非是击中头部的情况下。
He didn't die after I shot him in the chest with a FOMAS automatic rifle. He only went on a rampage and injured others after I got in the car. It is said that the NATO standard 5.56 by 45mm rifle bullet has a weak stopping effect unless it hits the head.
即便是打中胸腹等躯干部位，也要连续命中4-5枪，才能使一个人在短时间内迅速丧失攻击力并被击毙。我方才只打了他1枪，这才让他还能再爬起来攻击我。
Even if it hits the chest, abdomen, and other torso areas, it will take 4 to 5 consecutive hits to make a person quickly lose his attack power and be killed in a short period of time. I just shot him once, which allowed him to survive again. Get up and attack me.
以前我参加过的实战多是担任狙击手的角色，使用发射中口径全威力步枪弹的狙击步枪，基本没怎么碰上过这种事情。
In the past, most of the actual combat I participated in was as a sniper. I rarely encountered this kind of thing when using a sniper rifle that fired medium-caliber full-power rifle bullets.
没想到这次好不容易客串一回使用小口径自动步枪的突击手，真刀真枪的打一回就碰上了这种情况。不过现在不是想这些的时候，我被他掐着脖子相当难受，呼吸有些困难。
Unexpectedly, this time I finally encountered such a situation after finally making a guest appearance as an assaulter using a small-caliber automatic rifle and fighting with a real gun. But now is not the time to think about this. It was quite uncomfortable for me to have his neck strangled by him, and it was a little difficult to breathe.
但并没有恶化到让我无法承受的地步，这是因为幸亏我身上穿的这件自费购买的国产护神系列的重型防弹亦有护颈设计，这一块硬质部分虽然平时可能会个到下巴，
But it didn't deteriorate to the point where I couldn't bear it. This is because fortunately, the heavy-duty body armor of the domestic Guardian series I purchased at my own expense has a neck protection design. Although this hard part may usually hurt to the chin.
但关键时刻却能保命，就像现在。他第一次就掐在了我的护颈部位上，能抵挡子弹的硬质材料，想要用手掐动那是不容易的，这就让他发了半天力，却并没有把我给如之何。
But it can save lives at critical moments, like now. The first time he pinched my neck guard, it was a hard material that could withstand bullets. It was not easy to pinch it with your hands. This took him a long time, but he didn't hit me. How to give?
当发现这个问题后，这家伙当即把手一松，就要往上掐，想越过护颈掐我的上脖梗部分。可我哪里会给他这个机会？趁着这个机会，伸手从腰侧拔出了多功能军刀。
After discovering this problem, this guy immediately let go of his hand and tried to pinch me upwards. He wanted to reach over the neck protector and pinch my upper neck. But how could I give him this opportunity? I took this opportunity to reach out and pull it out from my waist. Multifunctional military knife.
刀刃由下往上猛地朝着他的下颚刺去，随后这一刀结结实实地刺了进去，20多厘米的刀身全部没入他的下颚，穿透下巴后又刺到了颅骨内部。随后我猛地一拧刀柄。
The blade of the knife stabbed toward his jaw from bottom to top, and then the knife stabbed in firmly. The entire blade of more than 20 centimeters sank into his jaw. After penetrating the chin, it stabbed into the inside of the skull. Then I fiercely a twist of the knife handle.
刀身跟着一起旋转，将这个窗口从一个相对细小的条形状扩大成了一个不规则的大洞。等到一股鲜血伴着脑溶物从里面顺着刀身再到刀柄，最后流到我的手上。
The blade rotated together, expanding the wound from a relatively small strip to a large irregular hole. A stream of blood, accompanied by the brain contents, flowed from the inside along the blade, then to the handle, and finally to my hand.
这人的身体失去力气，向下压在了我的身上，我便确定他这次是肯定死透了。推开他的尸体，我把军刀在他的破烂衣服上胡乱蹭了蹭，然后收回刀鞘，接着打开炮栓。
This man's body lost strength and pressed down on me, and I was sure that he was definitely dead this time. Pushing his body away, I rubbed the saber randomly on his tattered clothes, then retracted the scabbard, and then opened the breech.
再从地上搬起一枚106毫米高爆榴弹，双臂发力，将其送进炮膛，然后关闭炮栓，右手扶住炮管，控制炮口指向，左手抓住手柄准备击发。
Then lift a 106mm high explosive grenade from the ground, use both arms to send it into the barrel, then close the breech, hold the barrel with your right hand to control the muzzle pointing, and grab the handle with your left hand to prepare for firing.
眼睛则在叶世仪的帮助下，通过这门炮上已经锈迹斑斑的最原始机械标尺进行瞄准，先用4发炮弹将那4辆高炮皮卡摧毁。
With the help of night vision goggles, his eyes aimed through the rusty primitive mechanical ruler on the gun, and first used 4 shells to destroy the 4 anti-aircraft gun pickup trucks.
再将其余的20多枚炮弹一股脑的全部打在了武装分子最为密集的几个位置，趁着将其炸了个人仰马翻之际，我在耳麦中喊：你们都在哪里？我在无后坐力炮车上，快点过来。
Then I fired all the remaining 20 or so shells at the locations where the militants were most concentrated. While I was blowing them up and knocking me off my feet, I shouted in the headset. Where are you all? I'm on a recoilless gun truck, come here quickly.
咱们开着车走。此时那边的阿德里安和拉坎也在火力支援组的帮助下，通过反复穿插打乱了的武装分子的阵线，让他们开始摸不清楚我们还有多少人。
Let's drive this car. At this time, Adrian and Lacan over there, with the help of the fire support team, disrupted the ranks of the militants by repeatedly inserting themselves in, so that they began to lose track of how many of us there were.
甚至是误判我们的援军已经到来，而他们接到我的呼唤后，也立即做出了回应。之后叫上火力支援组的3人，一起向着我这边靠拢过来。时间不大。
They even misjudged that our reinforcements had arrived, but they responded immediately after receiving my call, and then called 3 people from the fire support team to move closer to me. Not much time.
6人全部集中到了皮卡车四周，火力支援组中的机枪手负责开车，其余5人则1人在副驾驶上以外，其余4人全部坐在车斗上，将枪口指向后侧方，做好射击掩护车辆撤退的准备。
All 6 people gathered around the pickup truck. The machine gunner in the fire support team was responsible for driving. The remaining 5 people, except for 1 person on the co-pilot, all sat on the truck body and pointed their guns to the rear and side. Shooting covers vehicle preparations for retreat.
这车子本来就没熄火，所以挂上当一脚油门踩下去，我们这就绝尘而去，顺着来时的路向着南边开始狂奔。
The car had never been turned off, so we put the car in gear and stepped on the accelerator. We sped off and started running towards the south along the way we came.
意识到开车的不是他们自己的人，武装分子对着车子展开了一段射击，只不过他们的射击技术实在是太差劲了，更何况还是在黑天。
Realizing that the driver was not one of their own, the militants started shooting at the car, but their shooting skills were really poor, not to mention it was still dark.
所以打了半天，除了枪声密集，听着让人本能地缩紧了脖子以外，我们几个谁也没被打着。而我们则开枪还击，又击毙了数名武装分子后，随着枪声的渐行渐远。
So after fighting for a long time, except for the intensive sound of gunfire, which made people instinctively tighten their necks, no one among us was hit. We fired back, and after killing several more militants, the sound of gunfire gradually faded away.
直到完全听不见了，我这才算是松了一口气，心里琢磨，这应该是冲出伏击圈了。未完待续。2. 褴褛还乡，而不要高兴得太早，这话就能形容几秒钟后我们的遭遇。
It wasn't until I couldn't hear anything anymore that I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that I must have broken out of the ambush. To be continued. 2. Returning home in tatters. Don't be happy too early can describe what we will encounter in a few seconds.
因为车子在开出去没多远后，就再次碰上了 IED， 估计是看到我们突围的武装分子通知了这附近的其他同伙，利用早就埋在这里或者是临时埋在这里的爆炸物袭击了我们。
Because the car ran into the IED again not far after driving out. It is estimated that the militants who saw our breakout notified other accomplices nearby and used the explosives that had been buried here or temporarily buried here to attack. Got us.
这堵的是我们的车一定会沿着这条路开，如果是的话，那他们的确堵对了。好在这次还是有天黑的因素，让引爆 IED 的武装分子判断距离失误，提前将其引爆。
The bet was that our car would go down this road, and if so, they were right. Fortunately, there was still darkness this time, which allowed the militants who detonated the IED to misjudge the distance and detonate it in advance.
可即便如此，那打在车头上的冲击波也震碎了挡风玻璃，玻璃碎片崩了驾驶员一脸，他被划伤的满脸都是血，同时还打伤了一只眼睛。
But even so, the shock wave hitting the front of the car shattered the windshield, and the glass fragments shattered the driver's face. His face was scratched and covered in blood, and one eye was also injured.
而前面车轮的左右2个车胎也都被爆炸产生的破片击中后漏气，前轮全部爆胎，车子自然无法继续开动。我们6人被迫下车，展开徒步行进。
The left and right tires of the front wheel were also hit by fragments from the explosion and leaked. The front wheels were all punctured. Naturally, the car could not continue to drive. The 6 of us were forced to get out of the car and start walking.
想想假设那枚 IED 的当量再大一点，或者是起爆的再晚一点，那我们这一车人都将落一个被炸得尸骨无存的下场。这些让我事后想起，感觉又庆幸又后怕。
Thinking about it, if the IED had a higher yield, or if it had been detonated a little later, all of us in the car would have been bombed with no bones left. When I thought about this afterwards, I felt lucky and scared at the same time.
而随后的这一跑就是30多公里，途中又躲避了多次武装分子的追杀后，6个人一直跑到接近后半夜，这才跑到了距离之前村庄相邻的另一个村子。
The subsequent run lasted more than 30 kilometers. During the process, the 6 of them evaded multiple pursuits by armed men until almost midnight before arriving at another village adjacent to the previous village.
确定村中安全没有威胁之后，我们这才各自找了块地方坐下来，把这口老气喘匀，一直歇了1个多小时，我才想起来我这嘴唇都快干得裂开了，便掏出军用水壶，拧开盖子，准备喝口水。
After confirming that there was no threat to the safety of the village, we each found a place to sit down and catch our breath. After resting for more than an hour, I remembered that my lips were almost dry and cracked, so I took out unscrew the lid of the military kettle and prepared to drink water.
正当拿出水壶刚喝了一口，这会儿我们旁边不远处一座当地常见民房的墙角后面，突然一个黑影闪过。经过这小半天加大半夜被伏击、被追杀的过程，此时此刻
Just as we took out the kettle and took a sip, a dark shadow suddenly flashed across the corner of a common local house not far from us. After half a day and most of the night, we were ambushed and hunted. At this moment, now,
我们的精神状态是极其紧张的。一见有黑影闪过，当即举枪做好战斗准备，并以战术手势进行交流，兵分2路包抄过去，看看这个黑影是个什么家伙。
Our mental state was extremely tense. As soon as we saw a black shadow flash by, we immediately raised our guns and prepared for battle. We communicated with tactical gestures and divided our troops into 2 groups to surround them to see who this black shadow was.
我心里念叨着，最好这是个村民，而不是武装分子，否则的话，我们再被包围一次，那基本上就得都交代在这里。心想着就已经绕过来了。
I thought to myself that it was better that this was a villager and not a militant. Otherwise, if we were surrounded again, we would basically have to explain here, and I had already bypassed it.
这会儿那个黑影距离我只有不到3米的距离，而且还是背对着我，正手扒着墙角往我们刚才坐着的位置张望呢。看起来这家伙根本没有察觉到我们将其包围的行动。
At this moment, the black figure was less than 3 meters away from me, and his back was turned to me. He was holding the corner of the wall and looking towards where we were sitting. It seemed that this guy didn't even notice that we were surrounding him. Action.
同时好像还在念叨着什么，估计是在嘀咕我们怎么一转眼就消失了。不过这家伙怎么想那不是我操心的事情，猎物已在眼前，我自然没有不下手的道理，只是为了枉杀无辜。
At the same time, he seemed to be thinking about something, probably muttering about how we disappeared in the blink of an eye. But what this guy thinks is not my concern. The prey is already in front of me, so I have no reason not to take action, just to kill innocent people in vain.
更为了说不定能问出点什么有价值的信息来，我出手的时候没有撕下手，而是向下一塌腰，一个箭步冲过去，双手扣住对方的膝盖，猛地往上一掀，同时用肩头顶住对方的后腰。
In order to know that I might be able to get some valuable information, I didn't do it privately when I made the move. Instead, I lowered my waist, rushed over with a lunge, clasped the opponent's knees with both hands, and lifted them up fiercely. At the same time, press the opponent's lower back with your shoulders.
对方没有丝毫防备，在我的动作下当场就被拉倒在地。我在此人趴下的瞬间，再往前一根步就骑在了对方的身上，或者说是坐在了此人的腰上。这个动作只要完成，
The other party was not prepared at all, and was pulled to the ground on the spot by my actions. The moment the person lay down, I took another step forward and sat on the other person's body, or in other words, sat on his waist. As long as this action is completed.
那对方只要不是绿巨人，基本上有天大的力量也都使不出来。只是这还没完，做结实了后腰一弓，双手猛地一摁此人的后脑，使其面门撞向地面，弹起时又用左臂穿过对方的脖颈。
As long as the other person is not the Hulk, he will basically not be able to use his huge strength. However, this is not over yet. He sits up and arches his back, and violently presses the back of the person's head with both hands, causing his face to hit the ground. And when he bounced up, he used his left arm to pass through the opponent's neck.
用小臂将其脖子狠狠地勒住，同时用右手抓住左手手腕，让发力的效率更高。这是一套标准的摸哨时捕俘战术动作，主要用来在摸哨、快速抓捕敌方俘虏等行动。
Use your forearm to strangle its neck severely, and at the same time grab the left wrist with your right hand to make the force more efficient. This is a standard set of capture prisoner tactical actions when touching a sentry post. It is mainly used for actions such as touching a sentry post and quickly capturing enemy prisoners.
在国内的我军是很多作战部队的必练技术，而外籍兵团是没有这个的。我之所以会是我在加入外籍兵团之前跟一个朋友，不是一起来服役的那个朋友的表哥所学。
In our country, many combat troops have to practice skills, but the Foreign Legion does not have this. The reason why I learned it from the cousin of a friend, not the friend who served together, before I joined the Foreign Legion.
这个朋友的表哥是我军海军陆战队的退役老兵，那会儿我在街头打架犹如家常便饭，对这种事情很感兴趣，所以喝了顿酒之后就学了一番。后来我还拿很多朋友当过我的试验品。
This friend's cousin is a retired veteran of the Marine Corps. At that time, it was common for me to fight on the street. I was very interested in this kind of thing, so after having a drink, I learned a lot. Later, I took many a friend once served as my guinea pig.
一直到了外籍兵团，这套技术我不仅没忘，而且因为经常联系，还手熟得很。言归正传，这一套补服动作下来，这人也基本就蒙圈了，只是我上手后感觉有点不对。
When I joined the Foreign Legion, I not only never forgot this set of techniques, but I also became very familiar with them because of our frequent contact with them. Closer to home, after this set of capturing actions, the person was basically trapped, but I felt something was wrong after I got started.
因为在接触此人的体态之后，我突然意识到这应该是个女人。这时，阿德里安也绕了过来，看到我把黑影骑在身下，便伸手跟我一起把对方给翻了过来。
Because after touching this person's body shape, I suddenly realized that this must be a woman. At this time, Adrian also came around. Seeing me riding the black shadow under me, he reached out and turned him over with me.
通过夜视仪那绿油油的画面，经过一番仔细分辨，我确认这的确是个女人，而且还是个年轻女人，一头长发，外加浓眉大眼，有些中亚人的样子，跟这里最常见西非黑人完全不一样。
Through the green picture of the night vision device and after some careful identification, I confirmed that this was indeed a woman, and she was still a young woman. She had long hair and thick eyebrows and big eyes. She looked like a Central Asian, which was exactly like the most common West African black people here. No, the same.
这倒也不是什么稀奇的事情，毕竟马里的非本地定居者本来就很多，即便这是个白人，我也不会惊讶的。随后又是一番搜身，确认没有武器后，便简单讯问了2句。
This is not an unusual thing. After all, there are many non-native settlers in Mali. I would not be surprised if this was a white man. Afterwards, he was searched again, and after confirming that there were no weapons, he was briefly interrogated.
这女人因为我摁后脑面门撞击地面的缘故，鼻子被摔破了。她擦着鼻血，怯生生地用半生不熟的法语说了一通，大致意思就是她是起来方便一下的，在回去的路上看到了我们。
This woman's nose was broken because I pressed the back of her head and hit the ground. She wiped the nosebleed and timidly spoke in half-baked French. The general meaning was that she got up to take a break and saw her on the way back. Us.
这才准备躲起来，想要看个清楚，没想到被我们发现后给摁在这里了。我琢磨着，既然如此，那就放人家回去，嘱咐2句，不要泄露我们的行踪也就罢了。
Then I was ready to hide and get a better look. Unexpectedly, we found him and pinned him down here. I thought that if that was the case, then I would just let them go back, with a few words of instruction not to reveal our whereabouts.
能这么放心，主要是因为当地的极端武装组织经常鱼肉百姓，所以本地的平民非常憎恨他们。他们来问，平民即便是知道也不会说的。女人满口应承，不会暴露我们的行踪。
The main reason for being so reassured is that the local extremist armed groups often prey on the people, so the local civilians hate them very much. If they come to ask, the civilians will not tell them even if they know. The woman promised not to expose our whereabouts.
本来到这里这个小插曲也就完事了，没想到的是，此事竟能成为了改变我人生轨迹的一个关键导火索。这个导火索就是作为指挥官的阿德里安突然兽性大发。
I thought this little episode would be over when I came here. What I didn't expect was that this incident would become a key trigger that changed the trajectory of my life. The trigger was that Adrian, as the commander, suddenly showed his bestiality.
他一边咒骂着一些法语中的俚语和脏话，一边伸手掐住女人的后脖梗，然后狠狠地往地上一摔，接着将其死死地摁住后，扭头对我们说：“你们几个要是也想要，那就排队等着。”
While cursing some slang and swear words in French, he reached out and grabbed the back of the woman's neck, then threw her to the ground, then held her down tightly, turned around and said to us, If you guys want it too, then just wait in line.
要是有什么人出来，拿枪把他赶走，不行就干掉。我不会太久的。说罢就开始解裤腰带，那女人则立即声嘶力竭地叫了起来，并拼命地挣扎着。
If someone comes out, drive him away with a gun, or kill him if that doesn't work. I won't be long. After saying that, he started to unbutton his belt, and the woman immediately screamed at the top of her lungs and struggled desperately.
但阿德里安这人是个标准的高加索大汉，身高超过 1.9 米，体重120多公斤。一个普通女人是无论如何也抵抗不住他那如熊一般的力量生物，所以挣扎基本是无谓的。
But Adrian was a standard Caucasian man, over 1.9 meters tall and weighing over 120 kilograms. An ordinary woman would not be able to resist his bear-like strength, so the struggle was basically pointless.
都说对于平民来说，败兵最可怕，因为败兵吃了败仗，一肚子鸟气没处撒。这时候要是碰上了手无寸铁的平民，那后者最容易变成败兵的发泄对象。
It is said that for civilians, a defeated soldier is the most terrifying thing, because the defeated soldier will be angry after the defeat. If he encounters an unarmed civilian at this time, the latter will most easily become the target of the defeated soldier's vent.
发泄的可能是愤怒，也可能是兽欲。像阿德里安这样被人追着跑了30多公里，还有心情干这种事情，就是此等败兵的典型。
The vent may be anger or animalistic desires. Being chased for more than 30 kilometers and still being in the mood to do such a thing like Adrian is a typical example of such a defeated soldier.
而类似的情况在人类数千年的战争史上更是多如牛毛。我看着眼前的一切，看着阿德里安将自己的老二从裤裆里掏了出来，并掀开了女人的衣服。
There are countless similar situations in the thousands of years of human war history. I looked at everything in front of me, watching Adrian take his dick out of his crotch and lift the woman's clothes.
一股不耻感涌上心头，当即上前抓住阿德里安的肩膀，说：“他只是个平民，你这样做难道良心不会受到谴责吗？哼，你这是怎么了？圣母附体还是爱心泛滥？她又不是你老婆。”
A feeling of disdain came into my heart, and I immediately stepped forward to grab Adrian's shoulders and said, "She is just a civilian. Won't your conscience be condemned if you do this? Humph, what's wrong with you? Are you possessed by the Holy Mother or overflowing with love? She's not your wife.
也不是你的姐姐或妹妹，更不是你妈，这跟你有关系吗？阿德里安说：“我们可以凶狠，但不能当没有道德底线的畜生。”我说：“妈的，这里还轮不到你这个亚洲猴子来教训我。”
Not your older sister or younger sister, nor your mother. Does this have anything to do with you? Adrian said. We can be cruel, but we cannot be beasts without a moral bottom line. I said. Damn it, it's not your Asian monkey's turn to teach me a lesson here.
信不信我现在就宰了你？阿德里安的兴致被我破坏了，他气冲冲地从地上站起来，并提好裤子，然后直勾勾地瞪着我说：“对于这种充满歧视性的攻击语言
Believe it or not, I will kill you now." Adrian's interest was ruined by me. He stood up from the ground angrily and pulled up his pants. Then he stared at me and said. For this kind of discriminatory attack language.
我在外籍兵团的这些年早已习以为常，只是我的应对方式并不是忍气吞声，而是打到对方见到我永远都不敢再说了为止。只是这里不是打架的时候。
I have long been accustomed to it during my years in the Foreign Legion, but my way of coping is not to swallow my anger, but to beat the other person until they see me and never dare to say anything again. But this is not the time for fighting.
我这才压住被他辱骂的怒火而没有动手。话说到这里，女人刚才声嘶力竭的叫喊声就惊醒了她的家人。一个身穿单衣光着脚的男人从房子里跑出来到了跟前。
Only then did I suppress my anger at being insulted by him and did not take action. Having said that, the woman's hoarse shouting just now woke up her family, and a man wearing single clothes and bare feet ran out of the house and came to them.
身边还剩着一个孩子，不用说，这男人是这女人的丈夫，而孩子自然也是他俩的孩子。只是这个男人是个西非黑人，看起来黑如炭块，并且不说骨瘦如柴，那也差不多了。
There was even a child beside him. Needless to say, this man was the woman's husband, and the child was naturally their child. However, this man was a West African black man, who looked as black as a piece of coal, and not to mention as skinny as a stick.
女人见自己的丈夫来了，就赶紧躲到了他的身后。这人操着一口当地的土语，连比划带说的跟我们讲了一大堆。我对这种土语一直是半懂不懂的状态。
When the woman saw her husband coming, she hurriedly hid behind him. This man spoke a lot of local dialect and talked to us with gestures and gestures. I have always been half understanding this dialect.
只能听懂一个大概的意思，那就是求饶。但这并没有唤醒阿德里安的同情心，他一伸手把自己作为自卫武器的 M9 型9毫米手枪从枪套里拔了出来。
I can only understand a general meaning, that is, begging for mercy. But this did not awaken Adrian's sympathy. He reached out and pulled out the M99mm pistol he used as a self-defense weapon from the holster.
同时还拿出了消音器拧在了枪口上，接着对准男人的腿就开了一枪。噗的一声，装有消音器的枪响后，男人应声倒地，然后痛苦地捂着中弹处蜷缩在了地上。
At the same time, he also took out a silencer and screwed it on the muzzle of the gun. Then he aimed at the man's leg and fired a shot. After the gun with the silencer sounded pop, the man fell to the ground, and then covered his shot in pain. Dan Chu curled up on the ground.
那孩子见自己的父亲倒地如此，立马就被吓得哇哇大哭了起来。阿德里安又咒骂了几句，3步并2步冲过去就抓着孩子的腿，嘴里还说着 看我不先摔死这个小杂种。
When the child saw his father lying on the ground like this, he was immediately frightened and cried loudly. Adrian cursed a few more times, rushed over and grabbed the child's legs, saying, "Let's see if I don't kill this little bastard first."
我这会儿意识到，这家伙现在就是个畜生，不阻止他是绝对不行的。想到这里，没有再多琢磨，飞起一脚，以一记正蹬，赶在他抓住孩子腿之前，踹在了他趴下身子的肩膀上。
I realized at this moment that this guy was a beast, and it was absolutely impossible not to stop him. Thinking of this, I didn't think about it anymore, so I flew up and kicked him before he could grab the child's legs. Lie down on your shoulders.
将其踢了一个趔趄，险些倒地的阿德里安被我这一脚给彻底激怒了，他再次大骂一声：“你个该死的亚洲猴子！”骂着就张开双臂冲着我过来了，我也做好了跟他干一架的准备。
Adrian, who staggered after kicking him and almost fell to the ground, was completely angered by my kick. He cursed again, dash. "You damn Asian monkey." He cursed and came towards me with open arms, and I was ready to fight with him.
只是在我俩打到对方之前，旁边还有4个人，那肯定不可能看热闹。经过这一番折腾，那都一拥而上，先是把我俩隔开，然后2个人拉一个，将我俩拉开。
But before we hit each other, there were 4 people nearby who couldn't watch the fun. After all the trouble, they all swarmed up, first separated us, and then 2 people pulled one to pull us apart.
拉住我的2个人里有黑人拉坎，他凑到我耳边，小声对我说：“阿德里安来兵团之前就是个强奸犯，你跟他计较犯不上。”我这会儿也不能回答什么，只是点了点头。
One of the 2 people who held me back was Locken, a black man. He leaned into my ear and whispered to me. Adrian was a rapist before he came to the core. You can't argue with him. I couldn't answer anything at the moment, so I just nodded.
心想，强奸犯都能到外籍兵团里来当基层指挥官，这地方还真是个只要作战素质过得去，就什么垃圾都敢收人渣收容所。我以前虽然也不是什么好人，但这等龌龊行径。
I thought that rapists could become grassroots commanders in the Foreign Legion. This place is really a scum shelter that accepts any trash as long as they have good combat skills. Although I was not a good person before, such dirty behavior.
我是绝对干不出来的。经过4人的奋力拉架，我俩是到底没打起来，只是那阿德里安指着我继续骂：“等会去了，我跟你的账再算，我会让你跪地求饶的。”
I absolutely can't do it. After the 4 people fought hard, the 2 of us did not fight in the end, but Adrian pointed at me and continued to curse, dash. I'll settle the score with you later. I'll make you kneel down and beg for mercy.
而我只是冷冷地回了一句：“奉陪到底。”接下来的事情就是我给那名被阿德里安用手枪击伤的男子留下了一点外籍兵团在外作战每人都会配发的个人药品。
And I just replied coldly. Stay with me to the end. The next thing was that I left a little personal medicine for the man who was injured by Adrian's pistol, which is distributed to everyone in the Foreign Legion fighting abroad.
这是一种拥有止血消炎功能并专门治疗枪伤、破片伤等战创伤的药物。我能做的也就只有这么多了。再后来，则是一阵彻夜的强行军。
This is a drug that has hemostatic and anti-inflammatory properties and is specially used to treat gunshot wounds, splinter wounds, and other war wounds. There's only so much I can do. Then there was a forced march through the night.
这段事情导致我和阿德里安的关系非常紧张，6人之间也再没有多说一句废话，就是闷头赶路，直至在天光破晓的时候，终于走到了法军距离此处最近的一处驻地。
This incident made the relationship between Adrian and I very tense. The 6 of us didn't say a word of nonsense between us. We just hurried on until dawn, and finally reached the nearest French military station.
也跟奉命在这里接应我们的驻军打了照面，在驻地里稍事休整一下，这里便派车将我们送回到了我们所在的外籍兵团营区。之后怎么写任务报告、伤亡报告？
We also met with the garrison who was ordered to meet us here. After taking a short rest in the garrison, they sent a car to take us back to the Foreign Corps camp where we were. How to write mission reports, casualty reports.
战术总结之类的事情自不用说，待一切全部完成之后，我本以为吃饭睡觉，然后就是一切恢复正常。而那些在此次伏击中阵亡的战友，说实在的
Needless to say, things like tactical summary. After everything was completed, I thought that everything would return to normal after eating and sleeping. But those comrades who died in this ambush, to be honest.
与文化作品中经常表现出的深厚战友感情不同，我虽然也把他们称呼为战友，但我并没有太多的伤心。这并不是说我这人就如此冷血，而是外籍兵团的环境造成的。
Different from the feelings of comrades behind the scenes that are often shown in cultural works, although I also call them comrades in arms, I don't feel too sad. This does not mean that I am so cold-blooded, but it is caused by the environment of the Foreign Legion.
因为外籍兵团是法军对外干预的最主要力量， 经常承担的是最危险、条件最恶劣的任务。也正是由于这个原因，外籍兵团的伤亡率就特别的高，而死了人就得有新人补上去。
Because the Foreign Legion is the main force of the French Army's foreign intervention, it often undertakes the most dangerous tasks with the worst conditions. It is precisely for this reason that the casualty rate of the Foreign Legion is particularly high, and those who die must have new people will fill in.
所以外这里的人员流动性相较于其他军队要大得多。同时，外籍兵团中的兵源来源十分复杂。
Therefore, the personnel mobility here is much greater than that of other armies. At the same time, the sources of soldiers in the Foreign Legion are very complex.
为了不让其中一些可能具有严重前科的大恶人们凑到一起拉帮结派，构成威胁整个兵团运作的不稳定因素，外籍兵团会在定期内将同一单位的人员在内部进行调换。比如说我。
In order to prevent some of the big bad guys who may have serious criminal records from getting together to form gangs and constitute unstable factors that threaten the operation of the entire corps, the Foreign Legion will regularly transfer personnel within the same unit internally, such as me.
在伞兵二团内，基本上是每月轮换一次，这加上新人的不断加入，导致身边基本没有什么有深厚感情的战友，更多的是一种临时组合。比如阿德里安对我来说就是这样。
The 2nd Parachute Regiment basically rotates once a month. This, coupled with the constant addition of newcomers, results in the fact that there are basically no comrades with deep feelings around, and it is more of a temporary combination. For example, Adrian is like this to me.
在此之前，我只跟他一同执行过2次任务。他这次作为我们的战地指挥官，完全也是临时性质的。这样的安排对一个作战单位发挥组织性是不利的。
I had only carried out 2 missions with him before this, and his role as our field commander this time was completely temporary. Such an arrangement is detrimental to the organization of a combat unit.
因为战友感情是战斗力的一大催化剂之一，可为了稳定，他们并不在乎这事。毕竟外籍兵团对于法军来说，更多的只是一种高级炮灰。这样的临时战友。
Because possessive feelings are one of the major catalysts for combat effectiveness, but for the sake of stability, they don't care about it. After all, the Foreign Legion is more of a high-level cannon fodder for the French army. Such a temporary comrade.
在我9年的服役生涯中，阵亡过很多，他们的名字不会出现新闻上，甚至不会出现在正式的法军损失列表上，只有他们的家人会收到一份抚恤金和一份阵亡通知书。
I have been killed many times in my 9 years of service. Their names will not appear in the news or even on the official list of French army losses. Only their families will receive a pension and a death notice. Book.
以及若干在服役时使用过的遗物，所以我早已习惯，或者说是麻木了。话说回来，所有事情看起来都恢复正常后，一个伏击发生的第4天中午，我来到驻地食堂准备吃午饭。
As well as some relics that were used in the service, so I have long been used to it, or I am numb. Having said that, after everything seemed to be back to normal, at noon on the 4th day after an ambush occurred, I came to the station canteen to prepare for lunch.
刚刚拿着金属托盘打了一份土豆泥、一碗罗素汤、一块廉价鹅肝以及2根炸鸡腿，外加一小碗专供亚洲兵员食用的米饭，坐下准备吃的时候，一只大手呼的一下从我的面前出现。
I had just grabbed a portion of mashed potatoes, a bowl of Russell soup, a piece of cheap foie gras, 2 fried chicken legs and a small bowl of rice specially prepared for Asian soldiers on a metal tray. When I sat down to eat, a big hand suddenly appeared in front of me.
用手指勾住不锈钢盘的边缘，猛地一用力，将我的餐盘外加里面的午饭全部甩到了旁边的柱子上。随着不锈钢盘撞击柱子以及落地后发出的2声碰撞声，
I hooked my fingers on the edge of the stainless steel plate and gave it a strong force, throwing my dinner plate and the lunch inside all onto the pillar next to me. There were 2 collision sounds as the stainless steel plate hit the pillar and landed on the ground.
原本嘈杂的食堂一下子安静了许多，周围众多正在吃饭的人纷纷将目光投向了这边。我这会儿手里还拿着准备喝汤的勺子，都不用抬头就知道干这事的人是谁，肯定是阿德里安。
The originally noisy canteen suddenly became much quieter. Many people eating around me turned their attention here. I was still holding a spoon for soup in my hand. I didn't even need to raise my head to know who did this. Who must be Adrian?
这家伙果然来找事报复了。我给你说过，上次的事完不了，今天我要把你这个亚洲猴子的肠子捏出来。我愤然起身，把勺子往旁边一扔，回骂说：“让我瞧瞧是谁的裤裆拉链没拉好。”
This guy really came to take revenge. I told you, what happened last time can't be finished. Today I'm going to pinch out the intestines of you, an Asian monkey. I stood up angrily, threw the spoon aside, and yelled back, Dash. Let me see whose crotch zipper is unzipped.
把你给露出来了。今天你要不把我打服了，那你他妈就是我养的。在外籍兵团服役，不会骂人是不行的。 我经过这里的锻炼，已经基本做到了不论动口还是动手都来者不拒的。
Exposed you? If you don't win me over today, then you will be my fucking child. Serving in the Foreign Legion, it's not enough to know how to curse. After training here, I have basically learned to accept everyone who comes, whether with words or with hands.
境界。而四周人一见我俩这是要打架，第一反应就是饭也不吃了，齐心协力把四周的桌椅全部搬开，给我俩让开场子。这些人巴不得有人打架好能看个热闹。
Realm. When people around us saw that we were about to fight, their first reaction was not to eat, and they worked together to move all the tables and chairs around to make room for us. These people I wish someone would fight so I could watch the fun.
而外籍兵团里的打架事件更是多如牛毛，还是那句话，只要不闹出人命，基本是没人会管的。我的身高是 1.88 米，体重102公斤，比阿德里安 1.9 米多。
There are even more fights in the Foreign Legion. As the saying goes, as long as no one is killed, basically no one will care. My height is 1.88 meters and my weight is 102 kilograms, which is 1.9 meters more than Adrian.
120公斤的块头，矮了2指头左右，身材小了半圈。不过这对我的士气并没有任何不利影响，因为我当无业游民时，在兵团新兵连时。
At 120 kilograms, I am about 2 fingers shorter, and my stature is half a circle smaller. However, this did not have any adverse effect on my morale, because when I was an unemployed vagrant and in the recruit company of the Corps,
把比他块头更大的对手打到跪地求饶的也不在少数。此时食堂里基本已经没人吃饭了，把我俩里3层外3层的围了个结实，然后各种起哄的口哨声、叫喊声满天飞，诸如什么。
There are also many who beat opponents who are bigger than him until they kneel down and beg for mercy. At this time, almost no one was eating in the cafeteria. We were surrounded by 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside. Then all kinds of whistles and shouts were heard all over the place, such as
打死他，踢烂他的屁股，把他的头拧下来之类的话不绝于耳，也不知道他们到底说的是谁。来吧，等我俩都在这个让出的空场中站好后，我眯着眼睛用挑衅的口气对阿德里安说
beat him to death. Kick his ass, whisked his head off. I heard words like this all the time, and I didn't know who they were talking about. Come on. After we both stood in the empty space, I squinted my eyes and said to Adrian in a provocative tone.
阿德里安没再说话，并抢先出手，挥起他那如皮锤一般大的拳头，对准我的脸就招呼了过来。我不用思考，完全是在本能的控制下一错身，将他的拳头贴着我的鼻尖闪了过去。
Adrian didn't say anything anymore, and took action first. He waved his fist as big as a leather hammer and aimed it at my face. The fist flashed close to the tip of my nose.
然后绷紧脚掌，齐腿用后脚跟向他的小腹猛踢过去。阿德里安躲闪不及，被我踢了个正着。按理说，若是我以前的那些个打过的对手挨这么一脚。
Then I tightened the soles of my feet, raised my legs and kicked him hard in the abdomen with my back heels. Adrian was unable to dodge and was kicked by me. It stands to reason that it would have been a kick to him from the opponents I had beaten before.
就是不丧失反抗能力，也得被踢躺在地上。但阿德里安这家伙还真是强壮过人，他的反应只是受力向后倒退了2步，随即又站稳了脚跟，表情上都没露出多少痛苦的表情。
Even if he didn't lose the ability to resist, he would have to be kicked to the ground, but Adrian was really strong. His reaction was just to take 2 steps back under the force, and then he stood firm again without showing any expression on his face. What an expression of pain.
这就再次扑了上来。接下来我俩就展开了拳头上的对轰，在躲开或防住对方重击的同时，尽量给予对方重击是这种对打的原则，但说的容易，想要做到是没那么轻松的。
This pounced again. Then the 2 of us started to fight with our fists. The principle of this kind of fighting is to avoid or prevent the opponent's heavy blows while trying to hit the opponent hard at the same time. But it is easy to say, but not so easy to do.
我和阿德里安互殴了几十拳后各有损伤，我的嘴角被他打出了2道口子，鼻子也被他打破了，而他则被我打豁了嘴唇，外加揍断了鼻梁。总的来说是他吃亏了。
Adrian and I punched each other dozens of times and each suffered injuries. He made 2 cuts on the corner of my mouth and broke my nose, while I punched his lip open and broke the bridge of his nose. Overall, he suffered the loss.
原因就是这家伙虽然强壮，但步伐灵活欠佳。他的大多数重击我都能通过移动身体从而躲开，可我的重击他通常是躲不开的，结果就是在挨了多次结结实实的拳头后。
The reason is that although this guy is strong, his steps are not flexible enough. I can dodge most of his heavy blows by moving my body, but he usually can't dodge my heavy blows. After a solid fist.
脸便被打成了这个猪头样子。阿德里安到这里是被我打急了，他在此之后出手就开始对准我的要害招呼， 比如裆部、太阳穴、咽喉等处，我一看这家伙是想玩命。
His face was beaten into the shape of a pig's head. Adrian came here because I was scared. After that, he started to target my vital points, such as my crotch, temples, throat, etc. I saw that this guy wanted to risk his life.
心说要玩命，那他妈的，我可不怕你。下定决心后，气血上涌，下手的力度加了3分，同时也开始往他的要害上发动猛攻。
If your heart says you will risk your life, then I am not afraid of you. After making up his mind, his energy and blood surged, and he increased his strength by 3 points, and at the same time, he began to launch fierce attacks on his vital points.
最终，我用双手护头，脚下猛冲的方式，顶着拳头钻进了阿德里安的内围。何为内围？这是一个格斗专用术语，指的是人两臂内侧的范围进入到这个范围内。
In the end, I used my hands to protect my head and my feet to rush forward, holding my fist and getting into Adrian's inner perimeter. What is the inner perimeter? This is a special term for fighting, which refers to the range inside a person's arms and into this range.
对方则无法利用双臂进行有效格挡，我方则可以攻击对方的躯干、中线等重要部位。内围决战也是高水平格斗比赛中最终定胜负的常见场景之一。而我钻进来的目的
The opponent cannot use his arms to effectively block, but we can attack the opponent's important parts such as the center line of the torso. Inner circle decisive battle is also one of the common scenarios in high-level fighting competitions that ultimately determines the outcome. And the purpose of my getting in.
那当然就是对付他，首先伸出方才护在头上的双手抓住他的衣领，然后猛地往下一拽，拉得他的身子向下一倾，同时将右腿弯曲成西风向前，并猛地向上抬起。
Of course, that was to deal with him. First, stretch out the hands that were protecting your head to grab his collar, and then yank him down, pulling his body downwards, and at the same time bending his right leg into a knee-forward position. Forward and lift it up sharply.
用膝盖最坚硬的位置狠狠地撞击他的上腹部，这一下打得非常有效。纵使阿德里安十分强壮，被我这一记顶膝给顶的，顿时就眼睛都快冒出来了。而我则抓住这个战机。
Use the hardest part of your knee to hit his upper abdomen hard. This blow was very effective. Even though Adrian was very strong, his eyes almost popped out after being hit by my knee. I seized this opportunity.
对准他因为疼痛弯腰而稍稍低下来的头，再发一记左摆拳，用拳锋打在了他的下巴上。这一下彻底将其击倒。只见阿德里安的身子顺着我左摆拳发力的方向横着摔了出去。
Aiming at his head that was bent down slightly due to pain, he sent another left swing punch and hit him on the chin with the edge of the fist. This time he was completely knocked down. Adrian's body was I swung my left fist in the direction of force and fell sideways.
然后躺在地上失去了意识。等有人给他检查伤势的时候，发现他的右侧下巴被我打脱臼了，在复位之前嘴巴都闭不上。周围看热闹的人群中发出一阵欢呼。
Then he lay on the ground unconscious. When someone checked his injury, they found that the right side of his jaw had been dislocated by me, and he couldn't close his mouth until it was reset. There was a burst of cheers from the crowd watching around.
反正我俩不管是谁把谁揍趴下了，他们都会这样。阿德里安被我打败，在我看来说白了就是这家伙的实战经验还是欠缺，估计他以前净捡软柿子捏了。
Anyway, no matter who of us beats him down, they will do this. Adrian was defeated by me. In my opinion, to put it bluntly, this guy still lacks actual combat experience. I guess he has picked up weak persimmons before.
这次碰上个稍微硬点的对手，就应付不了了。对于这场食堂单挑的打架，明面上我们两人都只是得到了口头上的警告，毕竟类似的事情在外籍兵团里属于司空见惯的事情。
This time I met a slightly tougher opponent, and I couldn't handle it. For this canteen one-on-one fight, apparently both of us only received verbal warnings. After all, similar things are commonplace in the Foreign Legion.
但随后我却领到了终结我服役生涯的后果，一纸开除通知。开除的具体理由不用多说，就是一小自然段的官方辞令，在通知书的右下角还盖有外籍兵团司令部的钢印。
But then I learned the consequences that ended my military service. An expulsion notice. Needless to say, the specific reason for expulsion is just a short paragraph of official words. In the lower right corner of the notice, there is also the stamp of the Foreign Legion headquarters.
以示有效。其中最气人的一句是不能服从管理，具有攻击型人格，对兵团是潜在危险因素。同时还将原本应该属于我的优秀服役勋章给剥夺了。
To show effectiveness. One of the most irritating sentences is, cannot obey management, has an aggressive personality, and is a potential dangerous factor for the Corps. At the same time, I was deprived of the outstanding service medal that should have belonged to me.
更把如果我能按期退役的话，应该得到的12万欧元的退伍费全给没收了。 这等于用寥寥数语就否定了我这9年来在外籍兵团的所有努力，外加最大的一笔经济收入。
I even confiscated all the 120,000 euros in retirement fees that I would have received if I could retire on time. This is equivalent to negating all my efforts in the Foreign Legion in the past 9 years in a few words, plus the largest financial income.
我一气之下也没有别的选择，只能用手头仅有的一点钱买了机票，准备转乘飞机回国。作为一个没有军籍的人，是不可能在这里继续待下去的。
I was so angry that I had no other choice but to use the little money I had on hand to buy a plane ticket and prepare to take a flight back to my country. As a person without military status, it was impossible for me to continue to stay here.
拉坎作为兵团中少数的热心肠之一，还帮我打听了一番。在我临走之前，他对我说：“你知道你为什么被开除，而且还没收了你的退伍费吗？”哼，难道是跟阿德里安有关？
Locken, as one of the few warm-hearted people in the regiment, also helped me inquire about it. Before I left, he said to me, "Do you know why you were expelled and your retirement pay was confiscated?" Humph, could it be related to Adrian?
我头也不抬，冷哼了一声，一边收拾着行囊一边说：“是的，不仅和他有关，应该说是有直接关系。我听说他给他叔叔打过电话，这才把你开除的。”拉坎说：“哈。”
I said with a cold snort as I packed my bags without raising my head. Yes, it's not only related to him, it should be said to be directly related. I heard that he called his uncle and that's why he fired you. Locken said. Ha.
给他叔叔打个电话就把我给开除了。他叔叔是谁呀？法国总统吗？我听他这么讲，这才摆出一脸不屑的表情看着他说：“法国总统那肯定是不至于，但却是兵团的宪兵部部长。”
Just call his uncle and fire me? Who is his uncle? President of France? After I heard what he said, I looked at him with a disdainful expression and said, I am definitely not the President of France, but I am the Minister of Gendarmerie of the Corps.
一个士兵的去留，他有直接的决定权，想给你罗织一点可以开除你的罪名，那简直就像喘口气一样简单。拉坎说：“呵，看不出来这货还有关亲戚，怪不得这种人渣都能横行这么久。”我说
He has the direct right to decide whether a soldier should stay or go. If he wants to compile some crimes for you to be expelled, it is as simple as taking a breather. Locken said. Hey, I can't tell this guy has official relatives. No wonder this kind of scum has been able to run rampant for so long. I said.
这家伙在步兵乙团、工兵团都待过，一直是嚣张跋扈的，而且从来没吃过亏，这回被你揍一顿，算是第一次栽跟头了。不过你付出的代价也的确太大了些，这些年的命。
This guy has been in the infantry regiment and the engineer regiment. He has always been arrogant and domineering, and he has never suffered a loss. This time he was beaten by you, which is the first time he has suffered a setback. But the price you paid is indeed too high, your life these years.
等于是白玩了。拉坎说：“那都无所谓了，他叔叔是宪兵部部长还是法国总统，已经跟我没有一丁点关系，我已经被开除了，那还有什么好说的？我现在唯一要做的就是赶上飞机。”
It's like playing in vain. Locken said. That doesn't matter. His uncle is the Minister of Gendarmerie or the President of France. He has nothing to do with me. I have been fired, so what else is there to say? The only thing I have to do now is the only thing is to catch the plane.
然后回国。我说：“那你回国之后有什么打算吗？”拉坎说：“先回去再说吧，毕竟被开除也在我的计划之外。不管怎么样，拉坎，还是谢谢你能给我说这些。”我说
Then return home. I said. Then what are your plans after returning to China? Locken said. Let's go back and talk about it first. After all, being expelled is not part of my plan, no matter what. Locken, thank you for telling me this. I said.
同时将收拾好的行军背囊往背上一背，然后伸出手来。拉坎则立即也伸出手来与我一握，接着用拳头互相上下一砸，最后一碰，行了兵团中的礼节。
At the same time, he put his packed backpack on his back and stretched out his hand. Locken immediately stretched out his hand to shake my hand, then smashed each other up and down with his fists, and finally touched each other, performing the etiquette of the regiment.
他挥拳在我胸口上捶了一下，说：“祝你好运！如果你在中国混得好，我说不定还会去投靠你。”哈哈，那我一定让你未来有一个可以投靠的中国朋友。我笑着说。
He punched me on the chest and said, I wish you good luck. If you do well in China, I might go back and join you. Then I will definitely let you have a Chinese friend you can rely on in the future. I said with a smile.
随后他把我送到了机场，就这么孤零零的一个人为我送行，一直到拿着登机牌上飞机前，他才走。我回忆一下以往与拉卡的关系，并没有说好到是挚友的程度，而他这样对我。
Then he sent me to the airport, and he saw me off alone. He didn't leave until I got on the plane with my boarding pass. I recalled my past relationship with Lachlan, and I didn't say that we were good friends. Extent, and he did this to me.
也许是我做了他想做却不敢做的事情吧，例如我揍了阿德里安一顿。坐上飞机后，这中间如何转机，并经过总时长10几个小时的飞行时间，终于到家的这个过程，不用详表。
Maybe I did something he wanted to do but didn't dare, like I beat up Adrian. There is no need to detail the process of how to transfer after getting on the plane and finally arrive home after a total flight time of more than 10 hours.
而就个人状态来说，此时此刻我真的可以说是一无所有，身上唯一的一张卡里只有不到1500欧元的存款。别人在外奋斗多年，回家看看那是衣锦还乡，而我眼下则是褴褛还乡。
As far as my personal situation is concerned, I can really say that I have nothing at this moment. The only card I have on my body has a deposit of less than 1,500 euros. Others who have worked abroad for many years and come home look like they are returning home in glory. But now I am returning home in tatters.
大有一种无颜面对江东父老之感。我这么多年来在外籍兵团中赚的钱，基本上除了1成留作我个人的日常开销之外，其余的5成寄回了家里，4成给了我在国内的女朋友。
There is a feeling of having no face to face Jiangdong's elders. Basically, 10% of the money I earned in the Foreign Legion over the years was reserved for my personal daily expenses, the remaining 50% was sent back home, and 40% was given to my girlfriend in China.
我每年回家一次，在看完父母之后都会去看他。他也经常问我什么时候回来，我总说快了快了，而这次是回来就不走了，不知道他知道这个消息后会不会感到惊喜。
I go home once a year to see her after visiting my parents. She often asks me when I will come back. I always say, soon, soon, but this time I came back and stayed away. I don't know that she knows the news. Will you be surprised later?
我走在机场通道里，心中如是想着。听着身边一人的手机里外放着一首歌，那是一首老歌，费翔的《故乡的云》，其中正唱道：我曾经豪情万丈，归来却空空的行囊。
I was walking in the airport passage thinking this. I was listening to a song playing on the phone of someone next to me. It was an old song, Fei Xiang's Clouds of My Hometown, in which it was sung. I was once full of pride, but I came back with an empty bag.
正所谓听歌最怕走心，这句歌词好像击中了我的软肋，让我近10年来都没有哭过的眼睛突然泛起酸来。未完待续。
As the saying goes, the biggest fear in listening to music is to be distracted.